Hi, my name is Miniature Panov, and we are in the 16th portion of the yearly cycle. Let's see, what can we gather from 16? It is a multiple of 8. It is double 8. It also, if you add 1 and 6, you get 7, which is completeness. If we think about the Exodus, they're finally getting out of Ramses, not really out of Egypt. They're still within Egypt, but they're no longer in Goshen. They're leaving Egypt proper. And the 16th letter of the Hebrew alphabet is Ayin. And Ayin has the numerical number of 70, is the number for the nations. And also in the pictographic alphabet, it will represent an eye or a well of water. We have the parting of the waters in this one with the Red Sea. It can also mean vision, because an eye represents vision. It could be literal or prophetic, also perception. There is a scripture that says that the eyes of God are roaming to and fro. So it represents the 7 spirits of God. So when we start the portion, it says, now when Pharaoh had let go the people, that's where Beshalach comes from, God did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines, even though it was near. For Jehovah said, the people might change their minds when they see war and return to Egypt. Therefore, Jehovah led the people around the way of the wilderness to the Red Sea, and the sons of Israel went up in battle formation from the land of Egypt. So that to me is interesting, because here we have a nation that has been enslaved for 430 years, but they are actually leaving Egypt in battle formation. And obviously they knew what tribe they belonged to, but that must have been a sight, just to see that many people. They say that there were 600,000 men on foot, but that didn't count women and children, plus the mixed multitude. So, wow, they stipulate, there is a speculation that it could have been around 3 million people. So that's a lot. It's interesting that our Father didn't take them through the land of the Philistine, because they would see war and they would want to go back to Egypt, a place of limitation, a place where they are squeezed. Kind of like, I think of a baby coming out of the birth canal when they're going through a very constricted space, that it is painful. It is not easy. Literally, their bones are so soft so that they can squish in between the birth canal. But when the crown hits the coldness of the outside, a lot of them go in. They want to come back, even though it's painful, they want to come back in. I know my firstborn did that 3 times. And finally, the doctor said, I'm going to have to hold him with forceps, because he would just go right back and not just stay in the canal. He would go right back in. And he did that 3 times. So that to me is interesting, that the people would prefer to go back into slavery. He even said, they said, it is better to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness. Really? This is the way I see it. Our days are counted. So it doesn't matter. I cannot add 1 day or take away 1 day. When God says that I'm going, I'm going. And I just rather spend my last days, however long they are, free, than staying behind in slavery for however long that is. But that is what happens when that's all you know, and fear is gripping your heart. So it's easy to say that when we're on this side of the freedom and not in slavery. Our Father gave the Egyptians a flood type, like a type of death by water, like in Noah's time. Another disobedient crowd. We read in 1 Peter 3:18, for Messiah also suffered for sins once for all time, the just for the unjust, so that he might bring us to Jehovah, having been put to death in the flesh, but made alive in the spirit, in which he also went and made proclamation to the spirits in prison, who once were disobedient, when the patience of God kept waiting in the days of Noah, during the construction of the ark, in which a few, that is, 8 persons, were brought safely through the water. So that's another link that I'm making in my mind. 8 were saved. And then here we have the second time going through water. In the portion is 16. Our father started with Adam and Eve, the world. Then it went through a cleansing of water during Noah, and our father started a new humanity with a new world. He separated his firstborn, or his bride, from the nations, creating a new nation to take the torch to the rest of the world, and he takes them through water again, a second time. We will see a third time, a final water cleansing, when Yeshua comes back, as we read in the prophecy in Zechariah 14:3 says, then Jehovah will go forth and fight against those nations, as when he fights on the day of battle. On that day, his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, which is in front of Jerusalem on the east, and on the Mount of Olives will split in its middle from east to west, forming a very large valley. Half of the mountain will move toward the north, and half will move towards the south. And on that day, living waters will flow out of Jerusalem, half of them toward the eastern sea, and the other half towards the western sea. And he will cleanse the city of the king. Then we see that the Israelites left Egypt, and they took, as they had sworn, they took the bones of Joseph. And Jehovah was going before them in a pillar of cloud by day to lead them on the way, and a pillar of fire by night to give them light. So when they travel by day, I'm sorry, where am I reading here? Fire. So when they travel by day and by night, he did not take away the pillar of cloud by day, nor the pillar of fire by night from the presence of the people. Could you imagine that they had a supernatural pillar of cloud during the day and a fire during the night for 40 years as they went through the desert? That must have been amazing. It continues telling us that Pharaoh said, what is this that we have done, that we have left Israel go from serving us? So he had horses harnessed to his chariots, and took his people with him. And he took 600 selected chariots, and all of the other chariots of Egypt with officers, all of them. It's interesting that we're told that there were a number of 600 chariots when they were actually more than that, because it says, and all the other chariots of Egypt. So why number only 600 and then say that there were more? Then another thing is interesting is that when we read last week, it said that there were 600,000 men on foot, aside from the children and women and the mixed multitude that also went with them. So if there are more than 600, why number 600 again? So as I think of number 6 is the number of beast and is the number of man. So when I am looking at this, the point that he's making by 600 men and 600 horses pulling those chariots, I feel like the Father is telling us, because he never misses anything. He doesn't put things in the Bible for nothing. That he is actually bringing to our minds that the 600 beasts are going to suffer the consequences of living by the flesh, of being like the serpent, which was the first cunning beast that deceived Adam and Eve, humanity. Here we have this, the Egyptians were so blinded by whatever lie they believed that they would throw alive babies in the Nile and let them drown. So here we have the Father saying, the beast comes to kill, steal, and destroy, and I will drown all this army alive in water, just like they did with those babies in water, alive. And our Father, we know he's not mocked by sin, but he does separates and bone and marrow, like flesh and spirit. He does that so that the spirit can be free from this slavery, because when we are being ruled by our flesh, we are enslaved to it. So even though it sounds gruesome, there is mercy within it. Read what Moses say to the nations of Israel, to the nation of Israel. But Moses said to the people, do not fear. Stand by and see the salvation of Jehovah, which he will perform for you today. For the Egyptians whom you have seen today, you will never see them again, ever. Jehovah will fight for you while you keep silent. I think that's a very interesting sentence. Jehovah will fight for you while you keep silent. That's a good one for me, that it's hard for me to be silent. Then the Lord said to Moses, why are you crying out to me? Tell the sons of Israel to go forward. As for you, lift up your staff and reach out with your hand over the sea and divide it, and the sons of Israel will go through the midst of the sea on dry land. Then the angel of Jehovah, who had been going before the camp of Israel, moved and went behind them. So that angel of Jehovah, that pillar of cloud, was in front of them, and they were going behind it. And then at this point, when Pharaoh's chariots started chasing them through the Red Sea, the pillar moved back and the nations moved forward. So it came in between the two camps. And it says, so it came between the camp of Egypt and the camp of Israel. And there was the cloud along with the darkness, yet it gave light at night. Therefore, the one did not approach the other at night. That must have been an incredible feeling of being protected from the back, from the rear, as they're going forward. And our Father is separating. He's showing this to us from the third plague in Egypt. He separated his people from, even within Egypt, he separated his people. And they're still in Egypt. They're not in the city of Ramses, but they're still within Egypt. They haven't left Egypt yet. And he's still making that distinction. This is my people, and this is the Egyptians. So he is protecting them all the way through. And it says, but at the morning watch, Jehovah looked down on the army of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and cloud, and brought the army of the Egyptians into confusion. He caused their chariots' wheels to swerve, and he made them drive with difficulty. So the Egyptians each said, Let me flee from Israel, for Jehovah is fighting for them against the Egyptians. Then Jehovah said to Moses, reach out with your hand over the sea so the waters may come back over the Egyptians, over their chariots and their horsemen. So Moses reached out with his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to its normal state at daybreak, while the Egyptians were fleeing right into it. Then Jehovah overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. The waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen. Pharaoh's entire army had gone into the sea after them. Not even one of them remained, but the sons of Israel walked on dry land through the midst of the sea, and the waters were like a wall to them on the right and on the left. So when we read that they walk in dry land, it should bring back to our memories day 3, when the waters were gathered in one place and dry land appeared. So here he's showing this is resurrection. I am bringing you from the dead, the death of slavery. So Jehovah saved Israel that day from the hand of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. When Israel saw the great power which Jehovah had used against the Egyptians, the people feared Jehovah, and they believed in Jehovah and his servant Moses. So we have now Moses and the sons of Israel sang this song to Jehovah, and it's a beautiful song. It's almost a whole chapter. Miriam, the prophetess, Aaron's sisters, took the tambourine in her hand, and all the women went out after her with tambourines and with dancing. And Miriam answered them, sing to Jehovah, for he is highly exalted. The horse and his rider he has hurled into the sea. This is like a song where the men sing one part and the women reply back. We'll know in Revelation talks about the song of Moses. We will be singing this song one day. There are 6 events that happen after this that gives us a chiastic structure. A chiastic structure just means that you have the same theme on the outside, and then it repeats on the 1st and the 6th, and then it repeats again, another theme, the 2nd and the 5th, and then you have another theme that will be right in the middle. And then that shows that is the most important. As you bring it all to the middle, I made a chart and we'll see it at the end. But the first thing that happens from the outside would be the theme of war. And we have Jehovah fighting against Egypt and its gods through the plagues. And Egypt represents that limitation, the slavery of the world. So then we have the second theme is water. And in this time, in this portion, so it's not just one sentence, it's really a portion of this chapter. This chiastic structure actually is going to be longer than one chapter. So we see that Moses led Israel from the Red Sea, and they went out into the wilderness of Shur. And they went 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. So we have again day 3 here. And we'll see how all this, day 3 means resurrection. We have water, which is the gathering of the water so that dry land can appear. And they get to, and it all represents Yeshua. So just keep those little clues, add them up so that it can give us the fuller picture. So when they came to Marah, They could not drink the waters of Marah because they were bitter. For that reason, it was named Marah. So that Marah means bitter. So the people grumbled at Moses, saying, "What are we to drink?" Then he cried out to Jehovah, and Jehovah showed him a tree. And he threw it into the water, and the waters became sweet, or potable, drinkable. There he made for them a statute and regulation, and there he tested them. We're talking about our Father is the one doing this. And he said, our Father, if you will listen carefully to the voice of Jehovah, your God, and do what is right in his sight, and listen to his commandments and keep all his statutes, I will put none of the diseases on you which I have put on the Egyptians, for I, Jehovah, am your healer. That word there is Rapha, Jehovah, Jehovah Rapha. Then they came to Elim, where they were 12 springs of water and 70 date palms, and they camped there besides waters. Now, when you hear that camp, that word actually could be camp, could be lay down, could be lay, like you would read in Psalm 23, when it says he laid them down in green pastures by the river. He gives them water. So it's kind of like he's just make those connections with the good shepherd. He leads his sheep into by the waters, beside the waters. Okay, so what can we learn from this? Sometimes we are, so let's just use all that we've read from this portion from this part, and let's think of our lives. So sometimes we are in a really bad place, and we feel like there is no way out. We think that we're going to be there, until the cows come home, until it's all over, because there's no other way around it. But God is so amazing, and then he comes and he delivers us from that place. And then we go into another place that, even though it may feel that word sure means enclosure. So it may feel like, okay, we're starting anew. We're going to it. It does feel a little restrictive where I'm at right now, but wow, I just came out of a horrible place. So I'm still not really realizing why this place is not completely open. But 3 days later, we come to a very bitter place. Something else happens, and we think, oh no, I thought it was bad, and now here I am. What is going on? Why is this? And how many times, I know I'm one that I feel like, yes, God told me this. Like he told them, I'm going to do this, 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 and this. And God did everything he said he was going to do. He does. He actually takes them out. He does. He's been faithful. And nonetheless, something goes wrong. And I'm like, did I hear him? Was that really God who told me all this? Why am I here? Did I miss the exit? Should I have gone out earlier or later? And it's just absurd that we do that. But it is his way of testing us, because if we're still doing that little calisthenia in our minds with fear, that means that perfect love has not cast out fear yet. We're still thinking, I'm going to be punished. I did something wrong. Oh no, what's going to happen? So it is important that we remember this, because he does takes us out. And if things don't look the way we would want it, like complete freedom, and we're finally in the promised land, and the land flowing with milk and honey, and no more problems, and the enemy, has been drowned by the sea. I danced. I had my party time, and then something goes wrong, and we think, I should have stayed there. What did I do this for? This will remind us, yes, you are supposed to. Yes, keep on going. Don't let go. Don't lose sight. That's why this 16, ayin, eyes, perception, vision, prophetically, he's telling you, even though physically it looks really bad, and it looks like now you're going to thirst because there is no water. You're in the desert, 3 days without water. You have all these people, children, animals, and there is no water. Just wait on him. If he could part the sea, I've heard this from someone that heard it from someone. And if it's good, it's obviously came from God. But when things go wrong, don't get hysterical, get historical. That means I'm going to remember God did this for me. He did this for me. He said he was going to do it, and he did it. So we just tell ourselves, okay, it's going to work out. I do not know how, but I didn't know how he was going to part the waters and bring me through, and he did it. So let me just wait and see. If he said wait and see to see the salvation of your God, then let me do that. He is going to do this. But he does give us, though, some parameters. He does say, one, not to be let me go back here. He will test our resolute. So he will see, are you going to stick with it? Or are you going to be like that baby that is not going to come out of you? It comes right back in. No, it's time to come out of the birth canal. It's time to come out of your mother's womb. You have to be born. So we have to have that resolute. And so we see that that he gives us. Find that, where is it that he gives us? He says, not one, we will be thirsty. So something may happen, and we will, whatever situation we're going through is going to make us need water. And we know who the living water is. So he will test us to see, would we go to him? Would we cry to him, or would we cry to a man like they did with Moses? Would we go to somebody, some earthly institution to help us out? Or do we go straight to our Father if we cry out to him? So would we just grumble? You know, when they did that, what the Father did was to show them the tree. So what does that mean? When I think of the tree was supposed to be a place of, oh Lord, I just lost the word. A curse. Thank you, Father. Okay, so the one nailed to the cross or nailed to the tree was cursed by that. So what did he nail to a tree? The curse that he had given humanity. So we have to remember that when we see the tree, we are thinking this will be, if he cursed it way back then, it is cursed now too. And Yeshua paid that. He put that curse to the tree so that we can walk in liberty, so we can walk in freedom. Not only that, he is called the tree of life. So that means that I can, so that tree is a contradiction, right? It could be negative or positive. So negative, I get rid of toxicity. Positive, I will throw life into the situation. I will use the tree of life, to speak into whatever bitter situation I'm in, and I will not grumble, but I will praise him and thank him for what he is going to do. And he will turn that water into drinking water. And we will not thirst. When we are thirsty and we look for him, he will give us water. So then he is really saying, are you going to pass a test? He's actually saying, this is a test. And I just need to see that you will. Oh, here it is. I was looking for it before. So number one, listen to his voice. Then he says, do what is right in his sight. A lot of times we do what is right in our sight or in somebody else's sight that tells us what to do. And it's not about that. It's about what he says, not what people say or what we think is the most logical explanation to what it's supposed to be. No, we listen to his voice and we do what he says is right in his sight. We listen to his commandments, his mitzvot, or also, and we keep them. We keep all his statutes. That word is chok and means boundaries too. That means we stay in that place that he brought us, not try to go right back in. We stay. He's bringing us out. We have to stay out, whether it's cold and we don't like it, and it was more comfortable where in the place that we knew. I felt safe and secure in there, but it's time to come out. That's what he's saying. And he reminds us that he is our healer, even if the situation is disease, it's illness. We have to remember he is our healer. And then he gives us, it says about 12 springs of water or wells, which 12 represents a year. So he's saying, I will take care of you. I'm not just giving you water for today. I will give you water throughout the year. Just stick with me. And the other is number 70. It says 70 date palms, which is 70 represents the nations, and the dates are very, very sweet. So he's saying, I will give you the sweetness of the land, and you will go to a good place. You will lay by the waters. I am the good shepherd. I will take care of you. So then it goes into the third one. And the third one, the third and the fourth are the little sandwich in the middle. So we have war, water, and now they have two instances. The first one is when they're hungry for food. And it says that they're given manna. So the first one is bread, and the second one, they're still saying that they're hungry and they want meat. So he gives them bread and meat. And it says, now on the 15th day of the second month after their departure from the land of Egypt, you have to remember, it was on the 14th that Passover was celebrated, instituted for the first time. And then on the 15th, they are actually traveling outside of Egypt, of Ramses, from the city, outside of into the wilderness, still in Egypt, but getting out of Egypt. And so sorry, I'm tired and I'm losing the train of thought. Okay, so so that was the Passover. So the unleavened bread, when they have the bread without leaven, because they left in a hurry and there was no time for it to leaven, and unleavened bread is instituted for 7 days, it is on the 15th. Because remember, it was the midnight when they had the firstborn dies in the land of Egypt, of the Egyptians, and they are leaving after midnight. So we're already on the 15th. So a month later means that if for any reason at any given time when Passover comes and you cannot, because somebody died in the family and you were close to a dead body, or you are sick and you cannot participate, you are in an unclean state, then you have a second Passover. And we have to remember that obviously that night, everybody did it. Everybody did their Passover. But then the next day, there were some, I don't know how many of them, but there were some that took the bones of Joseph out of Egypt. So whoever touched those bones, it's unclean. So he cannot do the unleavened bread. So they're not celebrating fully because they have touched a dead body. So they get a chance a month later to be able to celebrate Passover fully with unleavened bread and first fruits. So on that 15th, a month later, the second month of the year, they receive from the Father. It says, our Father gives them he gathers the congregation that they're grumbling, and he says, if only they say, if only we had died by Jehovah's hands in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the pots of meat, when we ate bread until we were full, for you have brought us out into the wilderness to kill us, this entire assembly, with hunger. Oh my goodness, I can see myself there. Then Jehovah said to Moses, behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people shall go out and gather a day's portion every day, so that I may test them, whether or not they will walk in my instructions. On the sixth day, when they prepare what they bring in, it will be twice as much as they gather daily. And the provision was that they were not supposed to take more than what they needed. And we'll read on what happened. So then it says, behold, the glory of Jehovah appeared in the cloud, and Jehovah spoke to Moses, saying, I have heard the grumbling of the sons of Israel. Speak to them, saying, at twilight you shall eat meat. So the first one was about, we're hungry, and he says, I'm going to give you bread. So remember who the bread of life is Yeshua. Yeshua is the living word of God. So the word is also food to us, and that bread that he's given them is manna. But then they also grumble, saying that they want meat. And then it says, and at twilight you shall eat meat, and in the morning you shall be filled with bread, and you shall know that I am Jehovah your God. So he was given them in the evening meat to eat, and in the morning bread. So it came about at evening that the quails came up and covered the camp, and in the morning there was a layer of dew around the camp. When the layer of dew evaporated, behold, on the surface of the wilderness there was a fine flake-like thing, fine as the frost on the ground. When the sons of Israel saw it, they said to one another, what is it? What is it? Manna. Ma means what? So what is it? For they did not know what it was. And Moses said to them, it is the bread which Jehovah has given you to eat. This is what Jehovah has commanded. Everyone gather as much as he will eat. Then you will take up an omer. An omer is it's a tenth of an ephah. It's a measurement, a piece according to the number of people each of you has in his tent. So everybody got an omer to eat. The sons of Israel did so, and some gather much and some gather little. When they measure it by the omer, the one who had gathered much did not have too much, and the one who had gathered little did not have too little. Everyone gathered as much as he would eat. Moses said to them, "No one is to leave any of it until morning." But they did not listen to Moses, and some left part of it until morning, and it bred worms and stank. And Moses was angry with them. They gathered in the morning by morning. They gathered it morning by morning, everyone as much as he could eat. But when the sun became hot, it would melt. Now, on the sixth day, they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for each. When all the leaders of the congregation came and told Moses, then he said to them, "This is what the Lord meant. Tomorrow is a Sabbath observance, a holy Sabbath to Jehovah. Bake what you will bake and boil what you will boil, and all that is left over, put it aside to be kept until morning." So they will put it aside until morning, as Moses had ordered, and it did not stink, nor were there any maggots. Then Moses said, "Eat it today, for today is a Sabbath to Jehovah. Today you will not find it in the field. 6 days you shall gather it, but on the seventh day, the Sabbath, there will be none." Yet it came about on the seventh day that some of the people went out to gather, but they found none. Then Jehovah said to Moses, "How long do you refuse to keep my commandments and my instructions? See, Jehovah has given you the Sabbath. For that reason, he gives you bread for 2 days on the sixth day. Remain everyone in his place. No one is to leave his place on the seventh day." So the people rested on the seventh day. So what he's saying there is not that you have to stay put and you cannot move around. It's just don't go out to work. Don't go out to find food. Don't go out to buy anything, because he has given you enough on the sixth. And if you obey what he's saying, then you will have no problem on the Sabbath to eat what you need to have, because you have worked, you have prepared on the sixth to be ready for the seventh. And, a lot of times we kind of like bucked up to that and say, "Why? I won't. I didn't have time yesterday. I'm going to do it today." And the truth is, if we are disciplined to do what he says, what is right in his eyes, not in our eyes, we would do what he said. On the sixth day, do what you need to do for the next day. So, well, I just have too many things on Friday to do. Well, move them to another day. Do them on Thursday. Do them on Wednesday. Just don't pile up everything. I know I'm one of those that I'm getting ready for the weekend, and on Friday I'm doing everything I didn't do during the week. So what he's saying is, if you're going to do that, 1, you're going to be exhausted. 2, you may not be able to finish. And if you're not be able to finish, the week is over. So it's not like, oh, well, I have another day. No, you don't. So the day is over. And Friday comes around and you're exhausted and you're just barking around because you just didn't get everything done. So it's a matter of discipline. Are we going to do what we think is right, or are we going to do what he says is right in his sight? So that's something that we need to pay attention to and work it out. It's not difficult. It can be done. It just needs a little discipline and change our patterns. So this is what Jehovah has commanded. A full omer of it is to be kept safe throughout your generations, so that they may see the bread that I fed you in the wilderness when I brought you out of Egypt. And Moses said to Aaron, "Take a jar and put a full omer of this manna, and place it before the Lord to keep safe throughout your generations." So think about it. If they took any extra manna that didn't eat the next day, if it was not the Sabbath, it would have maggots. It would spoil. It would rotten. And here he puts this in a jar where there's no refrigeration, and it's going to stay in the ark throughout your generations. So, that's definitely supernatural that our Father will keep, because, we couldn't. And Jehovah commanded Aaron to place it before the testimony and to be kept. And the sons of Israel ate manna for 40 years until they came to an inhabited land. They ate manna until they came to the border of the land of Canaan. So then the fifth one, so remember we had war, water, the two are food, hunger, and now the fifth one will be the same as the second. So it's water. So we have two waters. We have two food and hunger, and we have now thirst, water for thirst. The fifth is this fifth occasion is when they are at the rock of Horeb, which is the mountain of God. And remember the burning bush? So they're back in there, and he says to the people are quarreling with Moses and said, "Give us water so that we may drink." And Moses said to them, "Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you test our God?" But the people were thirsty for water there, and they grumbled against Moses and said, "Why is it that you have brought us up from Egypt to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst? Behold, I will stand before you there on the rock of Horeb, which is the mountain of God, where the burning bush happened, and you shall strike the rock, and water will come out of it, so that the people may drink." So here we are again. The water, remember, it was the waters were bitter, they were thirsty, and God showed them the tree, which represents the tree of life, is still Yeshua, and they put it in the water, and the water can be drank. So now this water, it's coming out of the rock. Who is the rock? Again, Yeshua, and it is in the mountain of Jehovah, and it is for them to drink. So we have those two still pointing out to Jehovah. And then the sixth one is the war of Joshua against Amalek. And Amalek represents our fleshy desires, and that war with the spirit. So Amalek was also the descendants of the tribe. It was a nomadic tribe that descended from Esau. So we know Esau represented the red one. He is a representation of the flesh, because of his desires his attitude was all fire up by his desires. I'm going to die if I don't eat right now. And he gave his inheritance that way, his firstborn blessing. So Moses said, "Tomorrow I will station myself on the top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand." Joshua, and he told Joshua to gather men to go and fight, and Joshua did, just as Moses told him, and fought against Amalek. And Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. So it came about that when Moses held up his hand with the staff, that Israel prevailed. As Joshua is fighting against the Amalekites, Joshua and his men would prevail. But whenever that hand came down, then the Amalekites will prevail. And Moses' hands were heavy. They had been there all day long. So they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. And Aaron and Hur supported his hands, one on one side and the other on the other. So his hands were steady until the sunset. And Joshua defeated Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. Then Jehovah said to Moses, write this in a book as a memorial and recite it to Joshua, that I will utterly wipe out the memory of Amalek from under heaven. And Moses built an altar and named it Jehovah is my banner, Jehovah Nissi. And he said, because Jehovah has sworn, Jehovah will have war against Amalek from generation to generation. So we know that the Amalekites hated the Israelites, and they fought in this one, and Joshua defeat them in this at this time, and Esau didn't defeat them all, but he did kind of conquer some of it, but kept some alive and animals and the king. But we know that David does destroy them in 1 Samuel between 15 and 30, the chapters 15 and 30, he does destroy them. But what God is saying here is that he will fight the Amalekites from generation to generation. So what is it? Did they destroy them, or would God have to fight them from generation to generation? And like Halisa likes to say, yes, both are true. One, because he is saying, this is a memorial. Just tell Joshua, this is going to happen. And but two, who is the last one that defeats them in scripture that we're told is David. And David is a type of Messiah. So what he's telling us is, I will fight from generation to generation until Messiah comes back, and then he will destroy them completely. And so let me show you. Let me share with you this so that you can see what the chiastic structure looks like. So here you have the first, we're talking about this war is against the world. And then at the end, we have again. So this is in Egypt, and this is with the Amalekites. Then you have water. They thirst for water here at Mara, and they thirst for water here when the rock at Horeb gushes out with water. And then we have here the hunger. One is for manna, for the bread, the other one is for meat, but they both are about hunger, and Joshua is all of this. So if you can see how war actually pushes out, gives us thirst, and we will succeed if we go to Yeshua to quench that thirst, or we will continue to be thirsty if we just go back to the world. And this is what they were saying when they got here. Let's go back to red. Let's go back to slavery. Let's go back to the world. Go back to Egypt. And but then after he has quenched your thirst, he will also quench your hunger, because after you are no longer thirsty, then you will be hungry. And we need the word. We need the living water. And then the cycle starts again. We're in this world, and he's constantly testing. We pass one test. It's like when you're in school. Do you just take one test and you never test again? No, you test every subject that you're studying, and even within the same subject, you get tested again and again and again until you finally graduate. And we know that we're going to graduate when we see him face to face. Philippians 1:6 says, he that started a good work in us will complete it until the day of Messiah. So this will not end until we see him face to face. And then at the same time, this is a little cycle that we go through. And we have to, as you can see, the world would like to squeeze us from both sides. But when it does, and it creates thirst and hunger in us, let's quench that thirst and satisfy that hunger with Yeshua. And then we don't have to go back to the world to get what they can't give us. They can only give us something temporarily, but it will not last as he can. So I hope you have a great Shabbat, And this will give you other angles that you can talk about with your congregation on Shabbat. Have a great week and great Shabbat.